Hi, I'm Harper. At 32, I gifted my dad a $150,000 Mercedes hoping for his love, but he called me a failure anyway until a DNA secret unveiled the truth. I'm standing in the sprawling backyard of my parents' estate, in an upscale Chicago suburb, the scent of charcoal and grilled steaks mixing with the sting of judgment in the air. It's the annual Carter family reunion on this sunny Friday, May 23, 2025, a day I've been dreading for weeks. The weight of my father's disapproval feels heavier than ever as I adjust my tailored emerald green dress, a piece I spent weeks choosing to scream successful without trying too hard elegant, but not overdone. The kind of contradictory mix my father, William Carter, always expects from women in business. My understated silver jewelry catches the late June sunlight, and my sensible heels sink slightly into the grass as I clutch a glass of rosé, trying to steady my nerves. The backyard is a vision of perfection, just like everything in my father's carefully curated world. The estate is adorned with string lights casting a warm glow, fresh flower centerpieces dotting the tables, and a long oak dining table set for 20 under a cream-colored canopy. My extended family, and my father's business, associates always a fixture at these intimate gatherings mingle around me, their laughter and chatter a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I can feel their eyes on me, the whispers behind their hands, the unspoken questions about why Harper Carter, the middle child of the prestigious Carter family, still hasn't lived up to her father's expectations. I take a sip of rosé, the tart taste doing little to calm the anxiety spiraling in my chest. I've spent my entire life trying to earn my father's approval, but no matter how hard I try, I'm never good enough. William Carter built his real estate empire, Carter Enterprises, from modest beginnings into a multi-million-dollar corporation. And to him, success isn't just a goal, it's the only thing that matters. Status, respect, and legacy are the pillars of his world, and family relationships always come second. I've known this since I was a child, but it doesn't make the rejection hurt any less. Growing up in this affluent suburb, our family looked perfect to outsiders. We lived in a Georgian-style mansion with white columns, a manicured lawn, and a driveway lined with luxury cars. My father was the king of his domain, a man whose presence commanded attention the moment he entered a room. But behind closed doors, things were different. My earliest memories of him aren't of a father who attended my school plays or helped with homework. Instead, I remember his voice, sharp and critical, pointing out that my B-plus grades should have been A's, questioning why I wasn't chosen as class president, reminding me that second place is just the first loser. His words cut deep, embedding themselves in my psyche, shaping every decision I've ever made. My mother, Eleanor, was his opposite in so many ways. When he wasn't around, she was warm and affectionate, her laughter filling the house like a melody. But in his presence, she became a shadow of herself, shrinking into silence, never contradicting him, never standing up for us kids when his criticism went too far. I used to watch her eyes dart to him before she answered even the simplest questions about dinner plans, weekend activities, or what time we'd be home. It was a strange power he held over her, a dynamic I didn't fully understand until I was much older. I often wondered why she let him treat us this way, why she never pushed back, but I was too young to see the fear behind her compliance. My siblings and I grew up in this complicated family structure, each of us navigating our father's expectations in our own way. My older brother, Caleb, 3 years my senior, was undeniably the golden child. He played basketball, made the honor roll, dated the right girls from the right families, and eventually followed our father into the real estate business after graduating from his alma mater, Northwestern. Everything came easily to Caleb, or at least, that's how it seemed to me. He always knew exactly what would please our father, while I was left guessing, always wrong. My younger sister, Sadie, 2 years behind me, somehow managed to navigate the murky waters of our father's approval system better than I ever could. She wasn't the overachiever Caleb was, but she had a natural charm, an almost supernatural ability to read the room. She knew when to speak and when to fade into the background, becoming the family peacemaker. Sadie could make our father laugh when his mood darkened, a feat I never mastered. She'd slip into my room after his particularly brutal criticism sessions, her voice soft as she assured me, It's not as bad as it seems, Harper. But it always was. For me, nothing I did was ever enough. I graduated top of my class in high school, secured a full academic scholarship to NYU against my father's wishes, as he pushed for Northwestern, seeing my choice as a rejection of his legacy. During college, I worked 2 part-time jobs while maintaining my GPA. Yet, he'd question why I wasn't interning at more prestigious companies during breaks. After graduation, I refused his half-hearted offer to work at his company, knowing I'd never be seen as anything but a pity hire. Instead, I moved to New York City with nothing but 2 suitcases and a fire in my belly, sleeping on a friend's couch, while applying to every financial firm I could find. When I finally landed an entry-level position at Goldman Sachs, his response was a curt, "Let's see if you last a month." But I didn't just last a month, I lasted 8 years, working my way up without family connections or nepotism, fueled by a mix of passion and a desperate need to prove him wrong. Just last month, I received a major promotion to senior investment strategist, becoming the youngest person in the firm's history to hold the position. The salary bump was substantial, allowing me to buy my dream apartment in Manhattan with savings left over. It was with those savings that I made what I thought would be a grand gesture, purchasing a brand new Mercedes S-Class for my father for Father's Day. The car cost $150,000, but I convinced myself it would be worth it to finally hear him say he was proud of me. In my fantasy, this gift would bridge the gap between us, showing him that I was successful, that I was worthy of his approval. Looking back now, I can see how desperate that need for validation was, how it had shaped every major decision in my life. My achievements weren't truly for meth, they were weapons in an unwinnable war for his affection. When I bought that car, I wasn't just buying a luxury vehicle. I was trying to buy what every child deserves freely, a parent's unconditional love. The annual Carter family reunion always falls on the last weekend in June, close to Father's Day, which means the gathering doubles as a celebration of William Carter's patriarchal status. This year would be no different, except that I had decided to stand out with this extravagant gift. As the date approached, my anxiety spiraled to new heights. I spent weeks shopping for the perfect outfit, something that would signal my success without seeming desperate. I settled on this emerald green dress, a designer piece my mother once mentioned my father respected, hoping it would finally make him see me in a new light. Past reunions flash through my mind as I stand here, each one marked by some form of paternal disappointment. When I was 16 and won the state debate competition, my father questioned why I wasn't focusing more on leadership roles, saying, "Debaters are a dime a dozen." When I graduated college, summa cum laude, his only comment was that my chosen field was unstable compared to real estate. My first bonus at Goldman Sachs resulted in him wondering aloud if finance was just a fancy way to gamble. And my first promotion led to questions about whether I'd been selected to fill a diversity quota. Nothing I did was ever an achievement on its own merits, always tainted by his skepticism. The day before the reunion, I drove the new Mercedes to my parents' estate, having arranged for delivery to a nearby dealership. I'd planned the presentation carefully, arriving mid-afternoon when my mother would be at her book club meeting, ensuring a private moment for this peace offering. My father answered the door in his usual pressed polo and slacks, despite it being a Saturday, looking mildly annoyed at the interruption. "Harper, you're early. The reunion isn't until tomorrow," he said, glancing at his watch as if I'd missed an appointment. "I know, Dad. I brought your Father's Day gift early and wanted to give it to you privately." I explained, my heart pounding as I handed him a small box containing the car key with the Mercedes emblem clearly visible. He opened it with the polite, detached manner he reserved for obligatory gifts, his expression shifting to surprise as he recognized the logo. "Is this some kind of joke?" he asked, and I guided him to the front window, where the brand-new car sat gleaming in the driveway. His face registered genuine shock, followed by something almost like pleasure, but it faded quickly to his usual analytical expression. "This is excessive, Harper. What are you trying to prove?" he asked, though he was already moving toward the front door, key in hand. "Nothing," I lied. "I got a big promotion, and I wanted to do something special for you." He circled the car twice, examining it like he might a property investment, noting features, asking pointed questions about financing and insurance that felt more like an interrogation than gratitude. After a brief test drive, where he commented on the steering being a bit loose despite the car's renowned handling, he parked it in the garage rather than leaving it in the driveway where guests might see it. His thanks were perfunctory, followed immediately by a comment that I must be doing well to waste money like this, effectively cutting the legs out from under my grand gesture. That evening, I called my best friend, Jenna, from my hotel room, fighting back tears as I recounted the cold reception. "You know what? Forget him," Jenna said with the righteous anger of a friend who'd heard too many similar stories. "Take the car back. He doesn't deserve it." I dismissed the suggestion, still clinging to hope that today would be different, that in front of others he might show appreciation, might finally see me. "Just promise me you won't show him that test," Jenna warned before hanging up, referring to the DNA test results I'd confided in her about. "Not unless you're prepared for nuclear fallout." I promised, but the envelope remained in my purse, a silent reminder of the truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. 3 months ago, out of curiosity, I'd used a popular genetic testing service to learn about my ancestry, expecting to find some distant European roots or a fun family story to share. The results revealed something I never expected. My genetic markers didn't align with being William Carter's biological daughter. After the initial shock, I pursued a more definitive test, obtaining DNA samples from my father's hairbrush during a brief visit home. The results were conclusive, and now they sit in that sealed envelopey nuclear option I haven't decided whether to deploy. The discovery explains so much. The lifelong feeling of being an outsider in my own family, the subtle physical differences no one acknowledged like my hazel eyes that don't match the Carter family's signature blue, or my curly hair in a family of straight blondes, the inexplicable coldness from a man who showed at least basic affection to his other children. I suspect he's always known, and that knowledge has colored every interaction we've ever had. The envelope feels like a ticking bomb, a secret weapon I both fear and can't quite relinquish. Now, standing in the backyard, I watch the reunion unfold with its predictable rhythm. The June weather is perfect, sunny with a gentle breeze, as if the environment itself is conspiring to create the illusion of a perfect family gathering. I take the long route to my parents' estate, using the drive to rehearse confident responses to the inevitable questions about my personal life, my career trajectory, my lack of a husband or children at the ancient age of 32. My knuckles are white on the steering wheel as I turn onto the familiar oak-lined driveway, already half filled with luxury cars belonging to extended family and my father's business associates. I spot the Mercedes I'd gifted him prominently displayed near the front entrance, strategically positioned where arriving guests can't miss it. Taking a deep breath, I smooth my dress, check my makeup one final time, and stride toward the imposing front door with the practiced confidence I've developed in boardrooms filled with men who underestimate me. My mother answers, her face lighting up with genuine warmth as she embraces me, whispering, "You look stunning, darling," before adding her standard warning, "Your father's in the back garden with the Harrison group." The grand foyer is already crowded with relatives, the usual mix of actual family and my father's carefully curated collection of connections who are treated as honorary members of the Carter clan. My Aunt Clara, my mother's sister, approaches immediately with air kisses and rapid-fire questions about my love life, while my Uncle Tom offers a hearty handshake and a booming, "There's our Wall Street star," which I know will irritate my father if he's within earshot. Cousins, second cousins, and family friends swirl around in predictable patterns. The same conversations repeated annually with minor updates, everyone performing their assigned roles in the Carter family theater. My father's entrance is exactly as choreographed as I expected, walking in from the garden with 3 business associates, all laughing at something surely only moderately amusing but treated as hilarious due to the speaker's net worth. His eyes sweep the room, acknowledging various guests with nods and brief greetings until landing on me. The flicker of recognition is followed by the briefest tightening of his lips before he nods exactly as he had to distant relatives and walks toward my mother to murmur something in her ear. No particular greeting from me, his middle child. The daughter who had just gifted him an automobile worth $150,000. I pretend not to notice, engaging in conversation with my cousin Lily about her law school applications, but the familiar sting of dismissal burns all the same. My mother materializes at my side moments later, touching my arm gently. "Darling, your father mentioned you brought a new car for him." "How incredibly generous," she says, her eyes communicating a mixture of gratitude and concern about the extravagance. "Please come say hello to the Harrisons. They just got back from a financial summit in Dallas and would love your insights." This is my mother's way, always running interference, creating social buffers, manufacturing reasons for interactions that should come naturally between family members. Caleb arrives fashionably late, as is his custom, making an entrance with his perfect wife, Lauren, and their two perfect children, receiving the warm paternal embrace I've spent decades trying to earn. "Dad, the new car is incredible. When did you decide to upgrade?" he asks, and I watch in disbelief as my father claps him on the shoulder and responds, "Sometimes you need to treat yourself, son. Success has its privileges," with no mention of the gift or my contribution. Sadie intercepts me before I can process this blatant erasure, pulling me into a genuine hug that lingers just long enough to communicate her understanding. "I heard about your promotion. That's amazing, Harper. Seriously groundbreaking," she whispers, using my childhood nickname that no one else uses anymore. Her sincerity is a balm, but the contrast with our father's indifference only highlights the disparity. As appetizers circulate, carried by hired staff, I notice my father leading a group of his business associates toward the front drive, gesturing animatedly. Through the large bay windows, I can see him showing off the Mercedes, opening doors, pointing out features, his face alive with a pride I've never seen directed at me. "He's been doing that all morning," Sadie murmurs, appearing at my elbow with a glass of sparkling water that I gratefully accept. "3 separate tours for different groups of his cronies. Mother told me you bought it for him. That was incredibly generous, Harper." I sip the water, watching as my father settles into the driver's seat, inviting one of his associates to experience the passenger-side luxury. Generosity wasn't my motivation, I admit quietly. Just once, I wanted him to see me as successful, as worthy of notice. "Pathetic, right?" Sadie squeezes my arm. "Not pathetic, human. But Harper, you need to understand. Dad will never give you what you're looking for. It's not because you don't deserve it, but because he isn't capable of it. Something in him is broken when it comes to you specifically." Her words hit with surprising force, not because they're new information, but because hearing someone else acknowledge the dynamic I've experienced my entire life makes it suddenly, painfully real in a way my private thoughts never have. The weight of the paternity test in my purse seems to double, the sealed envelope a ticking bomb I both want to detonate and desperately hope to contain. As the hour before dinner unfolds, I navigate the familiar rhythm of Carter family gatherings, everyone migrating to the formal living room with its stiff leather furniture and aggressively tasteful decor. I position myself strategically on a cushioned bench near the window, slightly removed from the main conversation circle, nursing my second glass of sparkling water and observing the family dynamics with newfound clarity. The knowledge of my genetic otherness creates an almost anthropological detachment, but the emotional storm inside me is far from settled. Caleb naturally commands the center of attention, regaling the assembled family with tales of his latest real estate acquisition, a struggling strip mall he plans to transform into luxury condos. The initial investment looked risky to my partners, but I saw the potential everyone else missed, he explains, with our father nodding approvingly from his leather armchair throne. "That's the Carter instinct," my father interjects proudly, seeing opportunity where others see failure. It's in the blood. The irony of his statement isn't lost on me, the phantom weight of the envelope in my purse growing heavier with each blood-related claim. The conversation shifts inevitably in my direction as my Uncle Tom remarks, "Harper, William tells me you've moved up at your firm. Senior investment strategist, isn't it? Impressive for someone your age." Before I can respond, my father clears his throat. "It's a decent stepping stone position. The financial sector is volatile, though always has been, not like having something tangible like property." He turns toward Caleb, Real assets withstand market fluctuations. They persist through generations. The familiar dismissal stings, despite my anticipation of it, the calculated pivot back to Caleb and real estate, the implied inferiority of my chosen career path. Actually, I begin, summoning the professional voice I use in difficult client meetings. My division generated 38% returns last quarter, outperforming the market by 22 points during significant volatility. Our risk assessment model, which I developed, has been adopted company-wide. A moment of impressed silence follows before my father responds with a dismissive wave. Numbers on paper. When the next recession hits, we'll see how that holds up. He turns to his business associate. Henry, speaking of property values, what do you think of the zoning changes in the Lincoln Park area? I excuse myself to refresh my drink, the familiar ache of rejection settling deeper into my chest. As I approach the bar setup in the dining room, I overhear my father's voice drifting from his adjoining study, the door slightly ajar. The car? Yes, quite an upgrade from the old model. When you work hard and build something from nothing like I have, you earn these luxuries. The male voice responding belongs to Walter Harrison, my father's longtime business rival and sometimes ally. William, you old dog, always the modest one. Your daughter Harper mentioned she bought it for you when we chatted earlier, said something about her promotion. Sounds like she's making quite a name for herself in New York. A brief silence follows before my father's response, each word precisely chosen. Yes, well, the girl has always been desperate for attention. Truth is, her success comes from the opportunities I provided private schools, college connections, the fundamental understanding of business I instilled in all my children. The car is just her way of showing she's finally applying what I taught her. The casual erasure of my accomplishments, the rewriting of my hard-fought independence as somehow stemming from his influence when he'd offered nothing but criticism, sends a shock of anger through me so intense I nearly drop my glass. The conversation continues, my father describing how he'd always pushed me harder than the others because I needed that extra discipline, painting himself as the architect of achievements he'd actively dismissed. I retreat before being discovered, anger turning into a cold, clarifying fury. In the main hallway, Caleb intercepts me, his expression uncharacteristically serious. Harper, a word? He guides me toward a quiet corner near my mother's prized fern display. Dad mentioned you've been asking Mother strange questions about her college years. What exactly are you digging for? His directness catches me off guard. In truth, after the DNA test, I had casually inquired about my mother's life before marriage, fishing for clues about possible relationships, but I'd thought my questions sufficiently subtle. Just getting to know her better, I reply carefully. Women in her generation didn't get many opportunities to build their own identities before marriage and children. Caleb studies me with our father's analytical gaze, the family resemblance striking in ways that now feel like further evidence of my exclusion. Look, whatever you're doing, whatever point you're trying to make with extravagant gifts and probing questions, just stop. The family has a certain order, a harmony. Don't disrupt that with whatever crisis you're manufacturing. His condescension is so perfectly echoed from our father that I almost laugh. Harmony? Is that what you call this toxic hierarchy? This system where one person's accomplishments are celebrated while another's are undermined? I'm not manufacturing anything, Caleb. I'm just finally seeing clearly. He steps closer, voice lowered to avoid attention. Dad has built everything we have. The Carter name means something because of him. Your fancy job in New York, your trendy apartment tit all stems from the foundation he created. Show some respect and gratitude for once. Before I can respond, our cousin Lily approaches, seeming to sense the tension. Everything okay over here? Aunt Eleanor is looking for both of you. I think dinner is about to be announced. Caleb plasters on his public smile, the perfect son persona slipping seamlessly back into place. Just catching up with my little sister. Business talk. Nothing important. As he walks away, Lily touches my arm gently. You know, my mom always says your father plays favorites like it's a game he's determined to win. For what it's worth, I think what you've accomplished on your own is incredible. Her quiet support nearly breaks my carefully maintained composure. I've spent so many years convincing myself that the problem was my perception, not reality, that having someone else acknowledge the dynamic feels both validating and devastating. The dinner bell chimes, my mother's signal for everyone to begin moving toward the formal dining room. I linger behind, my fingers brushing the outline of the envelope in my purse, weighing options, consequences, scenarios. Part of me wants to leave immediately, to withdraw from this charade of family unity, to protect myself from the inevitable wounds the evening will inflict. But a stronger, perhaps more stubborn part refuses to retreat, determined to see this through, to finally confront a lifetime of rejection with the physical evidence of its root cause. I check the envelope one final time, confirming the test results remain safely sealed inside, then straighten my shoulders and move toward the dining room, steeling myself for the performance ahead. The Carter formal dining room has always struck me as a perfect metaphor for our family, with its imposing oak table that seats 20 people, yet somehow still feels coldly impersonal. The framed portraits of stern ancestors watch judgmentally from the walls, and the elaborate place settings prioritize appearance over comfort, just like everything else in my father's carefully constructed world. My mother has outdone herself with the table arrangements, crystal glasses catching light from the chandelier, fresh flower centerpieces spaced precisely, name cards in elegant calligraphy, assigning each guest their predetermined position in the family hierarchy. I find my card predictably far down the table, seated between Lily's husband, whom I've met perhaps twice, and one of my father's younger business associates, safely distanced from any meaningful conversation. Caleb and his family occupy the prime positions near my father at the head of the table, with Sadie and her husband serving as buffers between the inner circle and lesser relations. My mother sits at the opposite end, her position a perfect illustration of her role in the family, technically equal but separated by the expanse of the table, connected yet distant. The first course arrives with military precision, waitstaff placing delicate appetizers of shrimp cocktail before each guest simultaneously. My father rises, wine glass in hand, commanding immediate silence without requiring a word. Welcome, family and friends, to our annual reunion. He begins with practiced charm, his public persona polished to a glossy shine. Each year, I'm reminded how fortunate I am to have built not just a successful business, but a legacy embodied by my family. His gaze sweeps proudly over Caleb, who nods appreciatively, then Sadie, who smiles dearly, before sliding past me as if I'm invisible. A special welcome to the Harrison Group joining us this year, he continues, acknowledging his business associates. When surrounded by success, one naturally attracts more of the same. The toast continues, with my father highlighting Caleb's recent business expansion, Sadie's charity work with the local library board, and ending with a pointed comment that family success comes from embracing proven pathways rather than unnecessarily challenging traditions, his eyes landing briefly on me with unmistakable meaning. As the meal progresses through 5 elaborate courses, my father directs conversation with subtle cues and direct questions, ensuring topics remain within his preferred domains of real estate markets, local politics, where he holds influence, and occasional sports discussions that inevitably highlight Caleb's former athletic achievements. When my mother gently attempts to mention my recent promotion during a lull, my father smoothly intercepts. Speaking of financial markets, Henry, what's your take on the Fed's latest signals? He says, effectively erasing her effort without acknowledging it had occurred. By the fish course, the familiar pattern has fully emerged, with my father periodically lobbing pointed questions in my direction, each designed to undermine rather than engage. Harper, your firm handles primarily domestic investments, correct? Limiting, isn't it, given the global expansion opportunities? He asks, and later, I understand your promotion came after the Davidson account. Fortunate timing that Caleb was able to introduce you to William Davidson at last year's charity gala. Each comment is carefully constructed to reframe any success as either limited in scope or dependent on family connections I had actively avoided using. Actually, Father, I respond, summoning the professional voice I've perfected in hostile boardrooms, our international division integrated my risk assessment model last quarter, and the Davidson account came through a blind pitch competition. No introductions involved. My corrections are delivered with practiced lightness, though I notice Sadie's sympathetic wince at each exchange. The familiar family dance, painful in its predictability. The main course arrives, a perfectly roasted lamb that requires all attention for several minutes, providing brief respite from the conversational minefield. My father uses the opportunity to open another bottle of exorbitantly priced wine, his consumption steadily increasing throughout the meal, a concerning pattern that my mother tracks with nervous glances. Caleb leans over to mutter something in my father's ear, receiving a dismissive wave in response. As coffee and dessert are served, my father's attention swings back in my direction, alcohol having eroded what minimal filters he typically maintains. "Harper, William tells me you're still single," comments Mrs. Harrison with well-meaning interest. "Such a beautiful, accomplished young woman. The men in New York must be intimidated." Before I can formulate a polite response about prioritizing career advancement, my father interjects. "Harper has always been focused on proving something rather than building something," he says, swirling his brandy contemplatively. "Some people chase accomplishments to fill other voids. Family requires compromise, something the Carter women have traditionally understood better than she has. The casual cruelty lands with practiced precision, implying my professional success is compensation for personal failure rather than an achievement in its own right." My mother's sharp intake of breath is audible even from my distant table position. "William," she begins with uncharacteristic firmness, but he continues as if she hasn't spoken. "Perhaps if Harper had shown more interest in suitable matches I introduced over the years, rather than dismissing them as boring or conventional, she wouldn't be facing her 30s alone." Each word is carefully selected for maximum impact, the public dissection of my personal choices, presented as paternal concern rather than the hostile critique it truly is. The pressure in my chest expands with each heartbeat, the culmination of a lifetime of these moments. These public humiliations thinly disguised as family concern. These careful erasures of my personhood and achievements. The envelope in my purse seems to pulse with potential energy, a nuclear option I had promised myself and Jenna I wouldn't deploy. As waitstaff clear dessert plates, I realize with perfect clarity that the current path is unsustainable, that continuing to seek approval from a man genetically programmed to withhold it is a form of self-destruction I can no longer afford. As coffee cups are being refilled and brandy offered to conclude the elaborate meal, my father pushes his chair back slightly, a signal universally understood by the gathered family as preparation for one of his impromptu speeches, a tradition that has evolved over years of Carter gatherings. The anticipatory silence falls immediately, conversations halting mid-sentence, silverware carefully placed down, all attention reflexively turning toward the patriarch. My father stands, brandy snifter in hand, his expression taking on the benevolent authority he reserves for these moments of public performance. Before we disperse to the garden for our annual family photograph, he begins, voice carrying that particular timbre of someone accustomed to commanding rooms. "I'd like to take a moment to express my pride in what the Carter family continues to build together." He gestures expansively, including the business associates as honorary members of this supposed dynasty. A family is much like a business enterprise, requiring vision, leadership, and participants who understand their roles in creating collective success. He continues, his gaze sweeping the table in that practiced way of appearing to make eye contact with everyone, while actually connecting with no one. As I look around this table, I'm reminded of how fortunate I am to have children who contribute to the family legacy in meaningful ways. He turns toward Caleb, raising his glass slightly. "Caleb, your business acumen continues to impress not just me, but the entire Chicago development community. The Oakwood Project represents exactly the kind of bold, forward-thinking approach that distinguishes Carter projects from lesser ventures. You've not only embraced the lessons I've taught you, but you've elevated them." Caleb nods with practiced humility that barely conceals his satisfaction, the golden child receiving his expected due. My father then shifts toward Sadie, his expression warming further. "And Sadie, your grace in balancing family responsibilities with community leadership shows remarkable maturity. Your work with the library board has brought genuine prestige to the Carter name, reminding us all that true success includes giving back." Your mother and I couldn't be prouder of the family you're raising and the values you represent. Sadie's smile is genuine, if slightly uncomfortable with the spotlight, always more at ease facilitating others' recognition than receiving her own. I brace myself for what will inevitably come next: the careful omission, the pointed silence where my name should be, the practiced technique of praise by exclusion that will communicate volumes to everyone present without requiring explicit criticism. What happens instead is somehow worse. My father's gaze finally lands on me, the slight narrowing of his eyes betraying the calculated nature of what will follow. As I reflect on my children's accomplishments, he continues, voice modulating to what others might mistake for thoughtfulness rather than the prelude to attack it actually signals, I'm struck by how differently success can be defined. He takes a deliberate sip of brandy, the theatrical pause allowing tension to build. I'm proud of all my children, he announces, raising his glass higher, and for a suspended moment, I feel a ridiculous flutter of hope quickly extinguished by his continuation. Except for the failure sitting at the table. The words land with precision cruelty, followed by a beat of shocked silence, before uncertain laughter ripples through the guests, being most assuming. This must be some inside family joke rather than the public evisceration it actually is. I feel blood rush to my face, then drain away completely, leaving a cold numbness as every eye at the table turns toward me with expressions ranging from embarrassment to pity to morbid curiosity. My father continues as if he's made a mild joke about the weather. Some people measure success by titles and salaries, by superficial achievements that look impressive on paper but lack substance and staying power. True success comes from continuing family traditions, from building upon foundations, rather than constantly seeking to prove individual worth at the expense of collective strength. The deliberate vagueness of some people fools no one, the target of his remarks crystalline in its clarity. My mother's face has gone completely white, her knuckles bloodless around her napkin, while Caleb looks smugly satisfied and Sadie openly mortified. Cousin Lily reaches across her husband to touch my arm in silent support, but I barely register the gesture. My entire consciousness narrows to a pinpoint focus on the man at the head of the table, who has just confirmed what the DNA test had already told me, that I am fundamentally separate, not truly part of this family in his eyes. For 20 seconds that stretch like hours, I remain frozen, experiencing the physical sensations of humiliation with clinical detachment. The burning face, the constricted throat, the accelerated heartbeat, the fight-or-flight response flooding my system with adrenaline. A lifetime of similar moments flashes through my consciousness, a continual slideshow of public corrections, subtle undermining, achievements reframed as failures, each building upon the last to create the summative message that I am fundamentally insufficient, unworthy of the name I carried, a name that genetic science has recently confirmed isn't actually mine to claim. As my father concludes his speech with some platitude about family unity that rings hollow after his pointed exclusion, something shifts irrevocably within me, a final thread, severing between the desperate child seeking approval and the adult woman who suddenly sees with perfect clarity the futility of that lifelong quest. The weight of the envelope in my purse transforms from burden to liberation, its contents no longer a shameful secret, but a key unlocking the prison of false expectations I've occupied my entire life. Without fully planning the action, I find myself standing, the movement so smooth and deliberate that it commands immediate attention, conversations halting mid-sentence, as all eyes turn toward me with expressions ranging from curiosity to apprehension, the latter primarily from those who have witnessed previous Carter family confrontations. My champagne glass remains on the table, deliberately not raised, the symbolism of my refusal to toast unmistakable. I smooth my dress with steady hands, surprising myself with the absolute calm that has replaced the earlier turmoil, as if I've passed through a storm into its peaceful eye. Thank you, Father, for that illuminating speech. I begin, my voice carrying clearly without effort, the professional tone I've perfected in boardrooms serving me well in this unexpected moment. I've spent 32 years trying to earn approval that was never going to be granted, measuring myself against standards that mysteriously shifted whenever I approached meeting them. Today, I finally understand why. The room has gone completely still, the kind of weighted silence that precedes significant moments. My mother's face is a mask of alarm, while my father's expression darkens with the recognition that this script isn't following his expected pattern. For those keeping score, I continue with deliberate lightness that belies the magnitude of what is coming. I graduated top of my class from NYU, built a career without family connections, and recently became the youngest senior investment strategist in my firm's history. By most objective measures, hardly the definition of a failure. I allow my gaze to sweep the table, establishing brief eye contact with several relatives who nod slightly in acknowledgement before returning my attention to my father. But success in William Carter's world has never been about objective achievement, has it? It's about conformity to his specific vision, about reflecting glory back upon him rather than creating one's own light. I reach for my purse with deliberate calm, aware that every movement is being closely observed, the unusual spectacle of the compliant middle child finally breaking rank too compelling to ignore. "I bought you a car worth $150,000? I say directly to my father, whose face has settled into the cold mask he wears when business negotiations aren't proceeding to his advantage. Not because you needed it, or even particularly deserved it, but because I still harbored the childish hope that a grand enough gesture might finally bridge whatever mysterious gap has existed between us my entire life." From my purse, I withdraw the envelope containing the paternity test results, the paper now seeming almost mundane considering the weight of information it contains. "For 3 decades, I've blamed myself for your inability to show me the same affection you show Caleb and Sadie," I say, my voice steady. "I've twisted myself into countless shapes, trying to become whatever would finally earn your approval, never understanding that the problem wasn't in my actions, but in my DNA." A collective intake of breath circles the table as the implication of my words registers. My mother's face drains of remaining color, while Caleb straightens with sudden alertness. I place the envelope precisely in the center of the table, my movements measured and deliberate. "For you, Dad. Happy Father's Day," I say with quiet finality, infusing the paternal title with all the irony the moment deserves. Without waiting for a response, I turn and walk from the dining room, my back straight, pace unhurried, preserving the dignity that has been systematically stripped from me throughout the evening. The shocked silence holds until I reach the foyer, followed by the immediate eruption of multiple conversations, questions overlapping into unintelligible noise. I continue outside without hesitation, the evening air cool against my flushed skin, the path to the driveway illuminated by decorative lanterns that create pools of light in the gathering dusk. The Mercedes sits where my father had positioned it for maximum visibility, its gleaming black paintwork reflecting the house lights, a symbol of everything I'd been trying to purchase with money that should have been invested in my own peace instead. The decision isn't conscious so much as inevitable, my hand finding the spare key fob I'd kept in my purse, the remote unlock responding with a gentle chirp that seems inappropriately cheerful for the moment. I slide into the driver's seat, the leather interior still carrying the new car smell mixed with the faint trace of my father's cologne, an olfactory reminder of his brief possession that will soon fade. Through the windshield, I can see figures appearing at the dining room windows, silhouettes gesturing animatedly, the family drama now fully unleashed by my departure and revelation. The engine purrs to life with expensive precision, the dashboard illuminating with welcome lights as if nothing momentous has occurred, as if this were simply another drive rather than a definitive break with 32 years of emotional servitude. As I reverse down the driveway, I catch a glimpse of the front door flying open, my father's figure framed in the light, one hand clutching what appears to be the opened envelope, his mouth open in what might be my name, but is lost beneath the gentle rumble of the German-engineered engine. The symmetry strikes me as I accelerate away. The luxury car he had showcased to associates while minimizing my contribution now physically removed, just as he had attempted to minimize my existence for 3 decades, both acts of erasure meeting in perfect narrative balance. The realization solidifies what had been intuitive action into conscious decision, the reclamation of the gift, paralleling the reclamation of self-worth I am simultaneously undertaking, both unburdened by expectations of gratitude that had never been forthcoming. In the rearview mirror, the Carter estate recedes, growing smaller with each second, its grandeur diminishing with distance, just as its emotional hold on me weakens with each rotation of the wheels carrying me away. The lightness spreading through my chest isn't happiness exactly complex and bittersweet for such a simple label, but rather the unfamiliar sensation of freedom, of choices, suddenly unconstrained by the gravitational pull of paternal approval that had distorted my orbit for as long as I can remember. I make it to the highway entrance before the first call comes through on my cell phone, Sadie's name flashing on the dashboard display, followed in rapid succession by Caleb, my mother, and several cousins, the digital evidence of chaos left in my wake. I silence the ringer but don't turn the phone off completely, some part of me needing to witness the fallout, even if I'm not ready to engage with it directly. As I merge onto the highway headed toward Chicago proper, rather than back to New York, I allow myself a single glance in the rearview mirror, just as a male figure I recognize as my father rushes into the street behind me, in his normally composed face, contorted in an expression I've never seen before, something beyond anger into territory I can't immediately identify. The distance is too great to hear his voice, but I don't need audio to recognize the scream from his body language alone, arms raised overhead in a gesture of such primal emotion that it momentarily renders him unrecognizable as the controlled patriarch who had engineered decades of emotional manipulation. The image burns into my memory as I accelerate away, a visual representation of the seismic shift that has just occurred, the carefully constructed family narrative, cracked beyond repair by 3 pages of scientific data and 1 moment of absolute clarity. By the time I check into a downtown Chicago hotel 30 minutes later, my phone displays 15 missed calls and 25 text messages, the digital equivalent of the explosion I detonated before walking away. I place the room key on the desk, kick off my heels, and finally allow myself to review the communications, starting with Sadie's texts, which progress from confusion. What just happened? What was in that envelope? To concern, Harper, please call me. Everyone's freaking out. To information, Dad is saying insane things. Mom locked herself in her room. Caleb is threatening legal action about the car. My mother's voice messages begin composed but rapidly deteriorate, the first a gentle, "Harper, please call home when you get a chance," evolving into her 5th message where her voice cracks with emotion. "The test can't be right. There must be some mistake. Please come back so we can discuss this as a family." Caleb limits himself to 2 texts, both threatening legal action if I don't return Dad's property immediately and retract your disgusting accusations. The contrast between my siblings' responses is unsurprising, their reactions perfectly aligned with the roles they've always played in the family dynamic. I sit on the edge of the hotel bed, phone in hand, the physical and emotional distance from the reunion already allowing me to process events with surprising clarity. The paternity test has confirmed what some deep, intuitive part of me had perhaps always known, that William Carter isn't my biological father, that the emotional distance he'd maintained throughout my life stemmed from knowledge he'd carried but never acknowledged. Now that the information is public, the carefully maintained family image is disintegrating in real time, decades of pretense collapsing under the weight of scientific fact. 6 months later, I've found a new equilibrium. I've met my biological father, Thomas Ellis, and started building a relationship with him and my half-siblings, finding a sense of belonging I never had with the Carters. My bond with Sadie has deepened, and my mother has become a more authentic presence in my life. William remains distant, his rejection now a source of pity rather than pain. The Mercedes has been sold, the funds invested in my future, and I've redefined family on my own terms, surrounded by those who love me for who I am.